I still remember the taste of my mother's pancakes on Sunday mornings, the way my father would lift me onto his shoulders to see the 4th of July parade, and how safe I felt curled between them on the couch during thunderstorms. Life in our modest house on Maple Street in Millfield felt complete when I was 5 years old. Dad worked long shifts at the manufacturing plant, his hands permanently stained with oil, while Mom balanced part-time nursing at the community hospital with keeping our small family together. Those golden moments seem like someone else's life now. I was their little girl, their only child, the center of their universe. Dad taught me to ride my bike in our driveway, running alongside until I found my balance. Mom read me bedtime stories, her voice soft in the lamplight. We weren't wealthy, but love felt abundant. Everything changed when my sister Heather was born. At first, I was thrilled to be a big sister. I imagined teaching Heather to walk, sharing my toys, having a built-in best friend. But as weeks turned to months, I noticed the subtle shifts. Conversation stopped mid-sentence when Heather cried. My drawings were hastily praised before Mom rushed to check on the baby. Dad's tired eyes lit up differently when he looked at Heather than when he looked at me. "Heather needs more attention," Mom explained when I complained about interrupted story time. "She's younger. You understand, don't you? Rachel, you're our big girl." I nodded, wanting to be good, wanting to understand. But understanding became harder when the differences grew impossible to ignore. My finger paintings were taped to the refrigerator for a day before being replaced by Heather's scribbles, which stayed for weeks. When I scraped my knee, I got a quick kiss and a Band-Aid. When Heather fell, it was ice packs, extended comfort, and worried phone calls to the pediatrician. By the time I was 8, the pattern was unmistakable. I needed a new winter coat I'd outgrown last year's, and the sleeves barely reached my wrists. Mom took me to the thrift store, where we carefully examined second-hand options for tears and stains. The same week, Heather got 3 new outfits from the mall, complete with matching accessories. "We have to budget," Dad explained when I asked why. But somehow, there was always room in the budget for whatever Heather wanted or needed. My 10th birthday was supposed to be special. I'd been promised a small party with school friends and had carefully written out invitations in my best handwriting. For weeks, I'd talked about nothing else: the games we'd play, the cake Mom would make, the decorations we'd hang. 3 days before the party, Mom sat me down at our kitchen table, her eyes avoiding mine. "Honey, we have to cancel your party," she said quietly. "Heather got accepted into Miss Abigail's dance academy, and the deposit is due this week. We just can't afford both." I nodded, fighting back tears that felt too big for my 10-year-old chest. "Okay, Mama." That night, I heard them talking in the kitchen while I pretended to sleep. "I feel terrible about Rachel's party," Mom whispered. "She'll be fine," Dad replied. "Rachel is independent. Heather needs these opportunities. She has real talent." Lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, I learned 2 things that would shape my entire childhood. My feelings didn't matter as much as Heather's, and I needed to take care of myself because no one else would. Elementary school became my refuge. While home felt unpredictable and dismissive, school offered structure and adults who actually noticed my efforts. Mrs. Patterson, my 5th-grade teacher, became something of a surrogate mother figure. She stayed after school to help with science projects and recommended challenging books that made me feel smart and capable. When I won the school spelling bee, she took a photo of me with my certificate since my parents couldn't attend. Heather had a swim meet that day. "You have a brilliant mind, Rachel," Mrs. Patterson told me as she helped me frame the certificate. "Don't let anyone dim your light." Those words became a lifeline I'd cling to for years. Middle school brought more of the same pattern. I joined the math club, debate team, and computer club, finding my tribe among other academically minded kids. My parents rarely asked about these activities, but they attended every one of Heather's soccer games and dance recitals, proudly displaying her participation trophies on the mantelpiece. My academic awards stayed hidden in my desk drawer. The house felt lighter when I wasn't in it, and I suspected my parents felt the same way. I was a reminder of obligations and responsibilities, while Heather was pure joy and possibility. When I was 13, I won first place in the regional science fair with a computer program I'd coded myself. It was my proudest achievement to date, weeks of work, solving problems I didn't even know existed, creating something functional and beautiful. The fair was on a Saturday, and for weeks I reminded my parents about it. "We'll be there," Mom promised repeatedly. Saturday morning arrived, and I carefully loaded my project into Dad's car. Just as we were about to leave, Heather announced that her dance studio had scheduled an emergency rehearsal for their upcoming recital. "We have to take her," Dad said, car keys already in hand. "This recital is important for her future. Your science thing is just... well, you don't need us there to win, right?" I went alone. When I accepted my blue ribbon, I scanned the audience, still hoping they might have made it after all. They hadn't. That night, they brought home pizza to celebrate Heather mastering a new dance routine. My science fair victory went unmentioned. It was around this time that computers became my sanctuary. The school had a few older models in the library, and I'd spend lunch periods learning to code. The logical, predictable nature of programming made sense in a way my family didn't. Computers didn't play favorites. They responded to effort and skill, not to charm or birth order. At 16, I got a job stocking shelves at the local grocery store after school and weekends. Every penny went into a savings account I'd opened myself. 6 months later, I had enough to buy a second-hand computer for my bedroom. My parents seemed almost relieved that I had something to keep me occupied and out of their way. High school was a blur of classes, work, and late nights coding. I made honor roll every semester, but my report cards barely earned a glance. "That's nice, honey," Mom would say before turning to help Heather with the significantly more challenging task of picking the perfect outfit for her date. When senior year arrived, college loomed as both opportunity and crisis. My guidance counselor, Mr. Simmons, helped me navigate applications and scholarships since my parents offered no guidance. I was accepted to several state schools and received a partial scholarship to Michigan State, my top choice. "We can't help you with tuition," Dad informed me when I shared the news. "We're already saving for Heather's college fund. She wants to attend Brighton College. It's very prestigious for performing arts." I nodded, having expected nothing else. "I'll figure it out." And I did. My high school graduation ceremony perfectly encapsulated my entire childhood. My parents attended but left halfway through before my name was even called because Heather had a dance competition in the next town. I accepted my diploma to the applause of strangers and the absence of family. That summer, I worked 2 jobs, the grocery store during the day and waitressing at night. I barely saw my family, and honestly, it was easier that way. By August, I had saved enough for my first semester's books and a security deposit on a shared apartment near the community college where I'd start before transferring to Michigan State. The night before I left, Mom knocked on my bedroom door. "We're proud of you, you know," she said, sitting awkwardly on the edge of my bed. "You've always been so capable." I wanted to ask why. If they were proud, they had never shown it. Why capability had become an excuse for neglect. But instead, I just nodded and continued packing. "You'll do great," she added, then hesitated. "You know, if you could help out a little once you're settled." Your father's hours got cut back, and with Heather's college preparations next year. And there it was. Even as I was leaving, barely able to support myself, they were already laying the groundwork to make me responsible for them. Boston embraced me in ways my family never had. The city's energy matched my ambition, and Innovate Tech turned out to be the perfect launching pad for my career. I started as a junior developer, but quickly proved my value. While other new hires socialized after work, I stayed late perfecting my code taking on additional projects, and learning from senior team members. My tiny studio apartment in Somerville wasn't much, but it was mine, the first space that truly belonged to me. I decorated it with secondhand furniture and a few plants, creating the warm home I'd always wanted. Making friends didn't come naturally after years of isolation, but Madison from the marketing department persistently invited me to lunch until I finally accepted. Her easy warmth and genuine interest in my thoughts broke through walls I didn't even realize I'd built. "You always look surprised when someone wants to spend time with you," she observed over coffee one day. "I guess I'm not used to being someone's first choice," I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Madison became my first real friend in Boston, introducing me to her circle and including me in weekend plans. Through her, I slowly built a support network of people who valued me simply for being myself. My career advancement was rapid. Within 18 months, I was promoted to mid-level developer, and 6 months after that, I became team lead for a major client project. My salary doubled from my starting point. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I had just started to enjoy this newfound stability when the calls from home intensified. It started during my junior year of college with what seemed like a reasonable emergency. "The roof is leaking, and we got an estimate for repairs," Mom explained during an unusual evening call. "It's more than we can handle right now. Your father's hours still haven't gone back up, and with Heather's college applications coming up..." I had exactly $2,300 in my savings account money I'd been carefully setting aside for next semester's books and rent. "How much do you need?" I asked, already knowing I'd send it regardless of the answer. $3,000 would help," she said, as if asking for a small favor rather than my entire financial cushion plus money I didn't have. I ended up sending $2,000, then picked up extra shifts to rebuild my savings. No thank you card came. No acknowledgement beyond a brief, "got the money" text. But I told myself it was worth it. They were my parents. After all, surely this would be a one-time thing. It wasn't. When Heather graduated high school and was accepted to Brighton College, the expensive private university my parents had been saving for, they called me the week before my final exams. "Brighton's tuition deposit is due, and we're a bit short," Dad explained. "We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, but this is Heather's dream school." "How much?" I asked, swallowing my resentment. $5,000. "We'll pay you back when we can." I knew they wouldn't, but I sent the money anyway. I picked up a coding project on the side to make up the difference. After Heather dropped out of Brighton after a year and a half, college isn't the right fit. She's an artist. "Rachel, her path was never going to be conventional like yours." The requests continued. Supporting her decision meant my parents continued paying her rent, car insurance, and living expenses while she found herself. And when their support stretched their finances too thin, they turned to me. Around this time, I met Michael through a coding meetup. Intelligent, kind, and genuinely interested in my thoughts. He was unlike anyone I'd dated before. Our relationship progressed naturally comfortable yet exciting. After a few months of dating, I finally shared some of my family history during a quiet dinner at his apartment. "Let me get this straight," he said, setting down his fork. "You put yourself through college while working multiple jobs, built a successful career from scratch, and now your parents expect you to subsidize your sister's lifestyle while she finds herself..." Hearing it summarized so starkly made me uncomfortable. "They're family," I said weakly. "Family supports each other." Michael replied, "This sounds one-sided." He didn't push further, but his perspective cracked open something in me. For the first time, I allowed myself to question whether my family's expectations were reasonable. Madison noticed the pattern during a weekend getaway I nearly canceled due to sending money home. "Rachel, this doesn't sound right," she said as I explained why I needed to cut our trip short. "You're working 60-hour weeks while your sister posts Instagram photos from South Beach. Something's off balance here." I defended my family reflexively, but Madison's observation lingered. Was I enabling a dysfunctional pattern? Was I somehow complicit in my own exploitation by my third year in Boston? I was sending home $1,000 each month, money my parents claimed they needed for mortgage payments or medical bills. I later discovered much of it went to funding Heather's increasingly expensive lifestyle. Trips to New York to network with artists, a new MacBook for her photography hobby, even a used BMW because public transportation wasn't reliable enough for her appointments. Meanwhile, I was still driving my 10-year-old Honda and carefully budgeting despite my comfortable salary. Heather's Instagram showed her at music festivals, trendy restaurants, and exotic beaches, all while supposedly being too financially strapped to support herself. When I gently questioned this during our rare phone conversations, she became defensive. "You don't understand what it's like trying to build a creative career," she said. "Not everything is as straightforward as your computer job." My computer job that was financing her bohemian lifestyle went unacknowledged. When I attempted to discuss the situation with my parents, they shut me down immediately. "Heather is going through a sensitive phase," Mom insisted. "She needs our support to find her path. You've always been independent. Rachel, you don't understand what it's like to need help." The conversation ended with them asking for an additional $2,000 for home repairs that I strongly suspected were fictional. My 30th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I took the day off work, planning a small celebration with friends that weekend, but wanting some quiet time to reflect on the milestone. Madison sent flowers to my apartment. Michael surprised me with breakfast in bed before heading to work, promising a proper celebration that evening. Around noon, my phone rang. My parents. For a moment, I felt a flutter of hope. Perhaps they'd remembered. "Rachel, good. You answered," Dad said, his tone businesslike. "We need to discuss something important. Not happy birthday. Not even a perfunctory greeting." "What is it?" I asked, already knowing it involved money. "Heather's birthday is next month, and we're planning a special trip to Sedona. It's a spiritual place, and she's been wanting to visit the energy vortexes there. The package we're looking at is $4,000, and we're a bit short." I sat down heavily on my couch. "Dad, today is my birthday." A pause. "Oh, right. Happy birthday, honey. So about Heather's trip?" "Yeah." Shh. Something inside me cracked. 30 years of being second best, of being the responsible one, the ATM, the afterthought. It all crystallized in that moment. "I can't talk about this right now," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'll call you tomorrow." I hung up before he could respond. That evening, as Michael and I celebrated at my favorite restaurant, my phone repeatedly lit up with texts from my parents. Not birthday wishes, but reminders about Heather's trip and questions about when I'd send the money. I silenced my phone and tried to enjoy my evening. But the damage was done. "Family stuff," Michael asked gently. I nodded, then found myself telling him everything. Not just the birthday slight, but the years of favoritism, the thousands of dollars sent home, the stark imbalance in how my parents treated their daughters. Michael listened without interrupting, then reached across the table to take my hand. "Rachel, you deserve better than this. You know that, right?" Did I know that I wasn't sure anymore? 2 weeks later, I received news that should have been purely joyous. I was being promoted to senior developer with a substantial salary increase. My team celebrated with champagne and cake. Madison insisted on taking me out for drinks after work. Michael planned a weekend getaway to mark the occasion. But my very first thought, was how much more my parents would expect me to contribute now. Sure enough, when I reluctantly shared the news during our weekly call, the response was immediate. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, sounding genuinely pleased for perhaps 3 seconds before adding, "This is perfect timing. Actually, the house needs a new furnace before winter, and we've been worried about affording it. Not, we're proud of you. Not, you've worked so hard for this. Just relief that their financial resource had been upgraded." Heather called the next day. "Mom told me about your promotion." "That's cool," she said breezily. "Hey, I've been thinking about starting my own business, a boutique clothing store with my own designs. I've got everything planned out. I just need startup capital. Since you just got this big raise..." The request was for $25,000. An investment, she called it, though there was no business plan. No evidence she'd done any research beyond picking a name for the store. I promised to think about it, then spent the night staring at my ceiling, Dr. Bennett's words about boundaries echoing in my mind. 2 months later, I visited home for Thanksgiving, my first trip back in over a year. The familiar streets of Millfield felt smaller, the family home shabbier than I remembered. Heather arrived late, sweeping in with dramatic hugs and stories about her latest creative endeavors. Dinner was a tense affair. Mom continuously served Heather the best portions while peppering me with questions about when I'd help with Heather's business idea. Dad mentioned the furnace replacement 3 separate times. Heather showed off expensive new jewelry that neither of our parents questioned. The breaking point came during dessert when Heather casually mentioned the tropical vacation she was planning for January. "How can you afford that when you're asking me for business startup money?" I asked, unable to contain myself. Silence fell over the table. Heather looked offended. Mom jumped to her defense. "Heather needs this vacation for inspiration. Her creativity is her greatest asset." "And what about my hard work? My savings? Are those assets only valuable when they're benefiting? Heather." Dad cleared his throat. "Rachel, that's not fair. We've always supported both of you." The dam broke. 30 years of repressed feelings flooded out. "Supported both of us. When you canceled my birthday party for Heather's dance lessons, when you missed my science fair for her recital, when you made me pay my own way through college while saving for hers. When exactly have you supported me?" Mom's face tightened. "You've always been fine on your own. Heather needs more help." "Because you trained her to need help," I countered. "You trained her to expect everything to be handed to her, and you trained me to expect nothing." "That's not true," Dad protested weakly. "Isn't it? Tell me one thing you've sacrificed for me the way you constantly sacrifice for Heather." Neither of them answered. Heather finally spoke, her voice small but cutting. "It's not my fault they love me more." The words hung in the air, shocking in their naked truth. No one contradicted her. I stood up from the table, legs shaking. "Thank you for finally being honest." The next morning, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Are you coming back to finish Thanksgiving weekend?" she asked, as if nothing had happened. "No," I said. "Well, before you head back to Boston, could you stop by the bank? We need next month's contribution a little early. The property taxes are due." No acknowledgement of the previous night's revelations, just another request for money. In that moment, crystal clarity washed over me. Nothing would ever change unless I changed it. "No," I said again, but this time it meant something different. "I won't be sending any more money." "What, Rachel? We're counting on you. We've already budgeted for it." "That's not my responsibility anymore," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. "I'm done." The explosion that followed was predictable. Accusations of selfishness, reminders of family obligation, thinly veiled threats about what this would do to our relationship. If our relationship depends on me financing Heather's lifestyle, then maybe we don't have a relationship worth saving, I said finally. I hung up and booked an earlier flight back to Boston. As the plane lifted off, I felt something unexpected relief. The weight of obligation I had carried my entire life had been set down, and I could finally stand straight. The first weeks after cutting financial ties were harder than I expected. Years of conditioning had convinced me that my value to my family was measured in dollars and cents. Without that connection, who was I to them? More disturbingly, who was I to myself? Madison and Taylor, who flew in from California when she heard what happened, formed a protective circle around me. Michael gave me space when I needed it and comfort when I asked. Their unwavering support helped anchor me during the emotional storm. My parents' response to being cut off was a textbook case of escalation. First came the guilt trip's long voicemails about how they might lose the house, how Heather was devastated, how families should stick together through hard times. When those didn't work, anger followed, accusations that I'd abandoned them, that my success had changed me, that I'd forgotten where I came from. The final phase was manipulation by proxy. Relatives I barely spoke to started calling, urging me to reconcile with my parents, insisting I didn't understand how much they needed me. Aunt Barbara, my mother's sister, surprised me by taking my side. "Your mother did the same thing to me for years," she confided during an unexpected call. "Always taking, never giving back. I'm proud of you for breaking the cycle." Her validation meant more than she could know. The first major test of my resolve came during the holiday season. Thanksgiving had been spent with Michael's family, who welcomed me warmly. But as Christmas approached, the pressure from my parents intensified. "We're family, Rachel," Mom pleaded in a voicemail. "Whatever disagreements we've had, surely you can set them aside for Christmas." I sent gift cards instead of visiting, protecting the fragile peace I'd found. Madison and Taylor helped me create new holiday traditions, a tree decorating party in my apartment, volunteering at a local shelter, a New Year's Eve celebration with friends who truly cared about me. For the first time, the holidays felt joyful rather than obligatory. In January, I received an unexpected call from Heather. Her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Mom and Dad are in trouble," she said without preamble. "The bank is threatening foreclosure. They're 3 months behind on the mortgage." I closed my eyes, waiting for the familiar sense of responsibility to overwhelm me. It didn't come. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "What are they planning to do?" "What do you mean? What are they planning to do?" "They need your help. Rachel." "They're going to lose the house. And what about you? Are you helping?" A pause. "I can't right now. I'm between things." "Between Instagram vacations? You mean, that's not fair." "Neither is expecting me to solve problems I didn't create," I replied. "Mom and Dad are adults. They need to figure this out themselves." "How can you be so cold?" Heather demanded. "After everything they've done for you." The question was so disconnected from reality that I almost laughed. What exactly have they done for me? "Heather, please, enlighten me." She couldn't answer. After hanging up, I sat in my living room waiting for the guilt to hit. Instead, I felt something unexpected pride. I had maintained my boundaries despite direct emotional manipulation. For the first time in my life, I had put myself first and stood firm. That night, I called Michael. "I think I'm finally healing," I told him. "I know you are," he replied. "I've never been prouder of anyone." 6 months after cutting financial ties with my parents, I found myself attending a conference on women in technology. One of the speakers shared her experience growing up in poverty and how a single scholarship had changed her trajectory. Her story resonated deeply with me, sparking an idea that wouldn't let go. The next day, I contacted my old high school in Millfield and inquired about establishing a scholarship fund. I wanted to help students who were academically gifted but lacked family financial support students like I had been. Working with the school administration, I created the Independent Futures Scholarship, an anonymous fund that would provide $5,000 annually to a student who demonstrated academic excellence despite challenging family circumstances. But the scholarship alone didn't feel sufficient. As I reflected on my journey, I realized how much I had learned about financial independence through trial and error. What if I could create a resource for young adults facing similar situations? Using my programming skills, I developed an app called Financial Freedom during evenings and weekends. The app offered practical advice on building credit, saving for education, recognizing financial manipulation, and establishing healthy boundaries. I included tools for tracking expenses, planning education costs, and calculating the true cost of loans. The app launched quietly, but word spread quickly through college forums and financial independence communities. Within 3 months, it had over 50,000 downloads and hundreds of positive reviews. This app helped me recognize my parents' financial abuse and gave me the courage to say no. One reviewer wrote, "I'm now on track to graduate debt-free despite their attempts to sabotage my finances." Comments like this confirmed I had created something truly valuable. 8 months after launch, the app had over 200,000 users and had been featured in several tech and finance publications. I maintained my anonymity, listed only as Developer R in the credits, wanting the focus to remain on the mission rather than my personal story. The Millfield Gazette ran a story about the new scholarship and the mysterious benefactor behind it. The article mentioned that the scholarship was paired with access to a financial literacy app that was changing how young adults navigate financial independence. I hadn't intended for the connection between the scholarship and the app to become public, but the local journalist had done her research. Still, my name wasn't mentioned, just references to a successful tech professional who grew up in Millfield. A week after the article ran, I received a text from Heather. "It's you. Isn't it the scholarship in the app? Mom and Dad saw the article and they're furious." I didn't confirm or deny, simply asked, why would they be furious about someone helping students? Because it makes them look bad. People in town are talking. Everyone knows it's about our family. A major financial education company expressed interest in acquiring the app, offering a sum that would make me financially secure for life. After careful consideration and ensuring the app's mission would be preserved, I accepted their offer. The sale made headlines in tech publications, and though I maintained my anonymity in the press, word eventually reached my hometown. 2 days later, Heather called, her voice lacking its usual defensive edge. "Can we talk just you and me? Not about Mom and Dad? Maybe over video chat?" Cautiously, I agreed. The Heather who appeared on my screen that weekend looked different, less polished, more genuine than the carefully curated image I was accustomed to seeing on social media. "I've been using your app," she said without preamble. "I didn't know it was yours at first, but the hometown reference in the Gazette article made me suspicious." I waited, unsure where this was going. "It made me see things differently," she continued. "The module about golden child syndrome. That's me, isn't it? And you're the scapegoat." The directness of her observation surprised me. "Those are psychology terms, but yes, the pattern fits." She nodded, looking down. "I always knew I was favored, but I didn't understand what it was doing to you or what it was doing to me." For the next hour, we had the most honest conversation of our lives. Heather admitted she'd never developed self-sufficiency because she'd never needed to. She confessed to manipulating our parents for money while knowing they were turning to me to cover the shortfall. "I'm not proud of who I've become," she said, wiping away tears. "I don't know how to function as an adult. And it's catching up with me." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I got a job last week, just retail. Nothing glamorous. It's the first real job I've ever had. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I need to start somewhere." For the first time in our adult lives, Heather was approaching me as an equal, not as a rival or a resource. It was a small step, but a significant one. "I can help with that," I said cautiously. "But I have conditions. You need to commit to financial counseling, and you need to be completely transparent with me." She agreed without hesitation. Over the following weeks, Heather and I established a new kind of relationship. I helped her create a budget, taught her basic financial skills, and connected her with resources from my app. She sent me her work schedule, bank statements, and progress updates. It wasn't a Hollywood reconciliation, too much damage had been done for that, but it was a beginning. My parents, having finally connected all the dots, attempted to contact me directly for the first time in months. "We've heard about your success," Dad said in a carefully worded voicemail. "We've always been proud of you. Rachel, maybe it's time to put the past behind us and reconnect as a family." The message contained no apology, no acknowledgement of past behavior, just a transparent attempt to reestablish contact now that I had achieved notable success. I didn't respond. Instead, I expanded the scholarship program, creating 5 additional grants for students across the Midwest. I established a mentorship component, pairing recipients with professionals in their field of interest. The program grew into a foundation supporting dozens of students annually, all operating under the radar of media attention, but making a tangible difference in young lives. 1 year after cutting financial ties with my parents, I sat in Dr. Bennett's office for what we'd agreed would be our final regular session. We'd worked through the major issues, and I was now equipped with healthy coping mechanisms and clear boundaries. "How do you feel about your decision, looking back after a year?" she asked. "It was the hardest and best thing I've ever done." I replied honestly. "I lost the family I thought I should have, but I gained the life I deserve." My professional success had continued. I'd been promoted to Director of Software Development, leading a team of 30 engineers. Michael and I had moved in together, converting a beautiful brownstone apartment into the warm, supportive home I'd always craved. Our relationship had deepened through the family crisis, revealing his unwavering support and commitment. Michael proposed on a quiet evening at home, presenting a simple but elegant ring and a promise of partnership based on equality and respect. "You've shown me what real strength looks like," he said as I accepted. "I want to build a life where we both lift each other up." As we began planning our future together, we discussed the family we might create someday, a family where every child would be valued equally, where love wouldn't be conditioned on performance or compliance. "The best revenge is breaking the cycle," I told Madison over dinner, celebrating my engagement, "creating something better than what you experienced." 3 years after that pivotal Thanksgiving confrontation, I sat in my Boston apartment looking at a photo of my younger self, serious and determined, even at 10 years old. I wished I could tell that girl that her worth wasn't determined by her parents' recognition, that she would find her people eventually, that the very independence forced upon her would become her greatest strength. But perhaps that message is better directed toward others still caught in similar situations. So I'll say it to you instead. Your value isn't measured by family approval. The traits that make you difficult, your independence, your questioning, your refusal to accept less than you deserve, are actually your superpowers. They will save you if you let them. Building boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary. Creating distance isn't cruel. Sometimes it's the only path to healing. And family, real family, is defined by actions, not blood. Sometimes you have to create the family you deserve. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Epilogue. 5 years later, the notification chimed on my phone as I sat in my corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. It was a message from Maya, the latest recipient of the Independent Futures Scholarship, updating me on her first semester at MIT. She'd discovered my identity the previous year. The anonymity had become harder to maintain as the foundation grew, but she respected my privacy while keeping me informed of her progress. "Just wanted you to know I aced my computer science midterm," she wrote. My professor said my code was some of the cleanest she'd seen from a freshman. "I keep thinking about what you told me. Your past doesn't define your potential." "Thank you for believing in me when my own family couldn't." I smiled, remembering my own journey from that small house on Maple Street to this office where I now led a team of brilliant engineers. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We were now supporting over 200 students annually across 15 states, each one breaking free from limiting circumstances. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Heather, sending her monthly budget update. She'd been managing her own finances for 3 years now and had just been promoted to assistant manager at her retail job. More importantly, she was 6 months away from completing her associate degree in business administration, paying for it herself. Dinner Sunday. Her text read, "I want to show you my final project. It's a business plan for a small boutique, but this time with actual numbers and market research." Our relationship had evolved into something I'd never expected: genuine sisterhood. It wasn't the fairy tale reconciliation some people hoped for, but it was real, built on mutual respect and honest communication. She'd never apologized for the past that wasn't her nature, but she'd shown through her actions that she understood the harm that had been done. My parents remained at arm's length. We exchanged birthday cards and brief holiday calls, but the deep emotional connection I'd once craved was gone, replaced by polite civility. They'd avoided foreclosure by downsizing to a smaller home and finally taking responsibility for their finances. Dad had even taken a part-time job at a hardware store after retirement. It wasn't the relationship I dreamed of as a child, but it was honest. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Michael appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the smile that still made my heart skip after 5 years together. "Ready to head home, Mrs. Chen?" he asked, using the name I'd taken after our wedding 6 months ago. "Just finishing up," I said, closing my laptop. Our home, our real home, waited for us across town. We'd bought a Victorian house in Cambridge with space for the children we hoped to have someday, and perhaps more importantly, for the teenagers the foundation occasionally helped place in emergency situations. As we walked to the parking garage, Michael took my hand. "Good day. Maya got into the advanced programming track," I said, "and Heather's presentation is this weekend. The business plan, the real one this time, with actual research and financial projections." He squeezed my hand. "You know what I love most about your foundation? What's that? You're not just changing individual lives, you're changing family trees. Every student you help will raise their children differently, and their children will do the same. It's geometric growth of healing." I hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. Each scholarship recipient carried forward not just educational opportunity, but a new understanding of healthy relationships and financial responsibility. They would never put their children through what they'd experienced. As we drove through the city streets, I reflected on the strange turns life had taken. The girl who'd been told she was too independent had built her independence into a career, a marriage, and a mission that was changing lives across the country. The family that had seen her only as a resource had inadvertently created someone whose greatest gift was helping others find their own resources. My phone lit up with another message, this one from Dr. Bennett, whom I still saw occasionally for maintenance sessions. "Saw the article about your foundation in Psychology Today. The section about breaking intergenerational trauma was particularly powerful. You should be proud." I was proud, not in the desperate, approval-seeking way of my childhood, but in the quiet, satisfied way of someone who had found their purpose and was living it fully. That evening, as Michael and I cooked dinner together in our sunny kitchen, I thought about the 10-year-old girl who'd had her birthday party canceled for her sister's dance lessons. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her that the independence forced upon her would become her superpower, that the family who couldn't see her worth would eventually witness her creating worth for hundreds of others. But mostly, I'd tell her that the love she was searching for so desperately, the unconditional acceptance, the pride in her achievements, the sense of belonging was coming. It just wouldn't come from where she expected. It would come from the family she chose, the family she built, and ultimately from the unshakable knowledge that she was enough, all by herself. The girl who was never anyone's first choice had learned to choose herself. And in doing so, she'd become first choice for dozens of young people who needed someone to believe in them, for a team of engineers who trusted her leadership, and for a man who loved her, not for what she could provide, but for who she was. Sometimes the greatest gift toxic families give us is the motivation to create something completely different. My parents had taught me exactly how not to love someone. In reaction to that lesson, I'd learned how to love well myself, my chosen family, and the young people who reminded me daily that breaking cycles was not just possible, but essential. The Foundation's motto, printed on every scholarship certificate, came from something Mrs. Patterson had told me in 5th grade, "Don't let anyone dim your light." But I'd added a line of my own, "And once you're shining, help others find their flame." As I fell asleep that night, next to my husband in our home filled with love and possibility, I smiled thinking about Maya's midterm, Heather's business plan, and the scholarship applications that would arrive next month. Each one represented a young person standing at the crossroads where I'd once stood, choosing between accepting limitation and pursuing possibility. I hoped they'd all choose possibility. I hoped they'd all choose themselves. And I hoped they'd remember that sometimes the family you're born into is just the prologue to the story. The real story. The one you write yourself begins when you decide you deserve better and have the courage to create it. This story is dedicated to everyone who has ever felt like an ATM to their family, who has struggled with the complex dynamics of favoritism and manipulation, and who has found the courage to set boundaries even when it meant disappointing people they love. Financial abuse within families is more common than many realize, often disguised as helping out or family obligation. If you recognize patterns from this story in your own life, please know that you're not alone, and that seeking support, whether through therapy, financial counseling, or trusted friends, is not selfish but necessary. Your worth is not measured by what you can provide others. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not financial dependency. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and your family is to step back and allow them to learn independence. The character of Rachel represents the thousands of young adults who find strength in their forced independence and use it to build better lives, not just for themselves, but for others facing similar challenges. If you are one of these people, remember your superpower isn't in spite of your difficult family dynamics, it's because of how you chose to respond to them. Breaking cycles of dysfunction is hard work, but it's some of the most important work we can do, not just for ourselves, but for the generations that follow. Choose yourself. You're worth it. The end.